What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? To our buddy Big John and G from Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming, indeed. Or maybe I should say, Skeletor has taken over Two Gun Pixie, and my full name is Skeletor Starscream Cobra Commander. Love doing that voice. It's just a silly voice. So how's it going, everyone? All right, another midday monologue, and I'm back outside again. Feels good to be back outside. It's not too hot right now, but New York City is threatening within the next hour or so to go above 90. Real feel over 100. I am so glad I'm out here right now in the shade and not out here an hour from now. Anyway, so for today's Midday Monologue Monday, what I want to talk about is expanding one's mind. Well, no, not really expanding one's mind. Expanding one's game. I'm not here to tell you how to expand your mind. Do that on your own. But expanding your games. There are two types of board games. Well, I'm sure a lot of things can fit into that category, but for this particular conversation, there are two types of board games, my friends. There's the kind of board games that come with expansions, and those that do not have expansions. Now, as a kid growing up, I never even noticed expansions. Most of the games I had when I was a kid didn't even have them, or I didn't understand why I would need them. Like with Hero Quest, I didn't understand why I would need an expansion for Hero Quest, because the game kind of rocked. Dark Tower never had any expansions. How could you? Unless it was a different tower. We're onto something there. But really, it wasn't until, I really started delving deep into the whole board gaming community, the whole board gaming lifestyle, that I started noticing that there was these things called expansions, and that they were really kind of worth it in most cases. Or at least you hope they are. Now, when it comes to expansions, there's two. There's a lot of twos here today. There are two main types of expansions that one can get for a game. And that game can publish an expansion which is more of the same. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't add anything. It doesn't bring anything new or different to the existing game that you already have. It adds in more character cards, more monster cards, more treasure cards, more encounter cards, or whatever kind of cards is in the system that you're playing, and it'll add more to it. And that's not generally a bad thing. Usually I kind of like that, because I feel that the base games could always use more base content in some cases, I guess is the best way to put that. But then again, there are the expansion games that add something, that bring something new and something different to the base game that wasn't there initially. Off the top of my head, Merchants and Marauders, beautiful game, fantastically fun game where you're playing a seagoer, and it is your decision whether you're going to be a pirate or whether you're going to be an honest merchant, or maybe just go around adventuring and finding rumors and stuff. The game works great. They came out with an expansion for it, and it was like all new stuff, different kind of what they called modules that you could plug right into the base game. You can plug them all in, you can plug some of them in, you can plug one of them in, and it'll add different aspects that the base game doesn't have. So those are the two kinds of expansions that we get with board games. I can't even think of what another type of expansion could possibly even be in the future. It seems like that's really about all expansions can do. They can give you more of the same, they can give you something new and different, and best case scenario, it's usually a mix of the two. So what I want to talk about is 3 games in my collection that I enjoy, that I love playing, that I really wish there was an expansion or two for. Now, overall, I'd also like to know if there's any games you have in your collection, or maybe that you've played. Maybe you don't have it in your collection, but you've played it at a friend's house or at a convention or something, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, that game could use an expansion. Put that down in the comments, because I really want to know what your thoughts are on this and what kind of expansions are on your mind. But let's start with this. So as always, my friends, I got my nerdy notebook with me. because I was taking some notes on this. Now, all three of these games I've talked about before on this channel in one show or another. So they shouldn't come to be completely out of left field for anyone. So why don't we start with a game that kind of started me wanting to be a board game reviewer, because I didn't think there was enough YouTube channels or review sites or blogs that were actually talking about this game, and I thought it needed a little bit more attention. And that's one of the things that really started me on this path. And I think that game in itself, well, honestly, I'd like to see a redux of the game. I'd like to see a new edition of the game. But the edition that stands is fine. I only say that because it's so old. But really, it's fine. The way it stands, the way it sits, the way it plays, the game is fine by itself. And that game is by Wizards of the Coast, and that is, I've already talked about this, Infighting. I love this game. A little mix of some cards, get some dice. It's a barroom fight in Dungeons and Dragons. That is fun. I have never finished a game of this and been like, oh, I wish we played something else. Never once. Now, what I think I would like to see, if they don't do a whole redux of this, and they just want to give us an expansion, for this, I would like to see a mix. I would like to see more of the same. I'd like to see some more character cards. I'd like to see some more action cards, bystander cards, sure. I would like to see all that. Do we need more dice for it? I don't think so. I think the dice are fine the way they are. Unless you're going to be changing the rules, dice aren't needed. But some new cards, right? And I also think there should be at least 2 other categories. One of them, I think, would be an interesting drop, and that is magical item cards, where if you knock someone out, if you defeat someone in this bar fight, something drops. And we all love drops. We love drops because we're trained to love drops because of video games. We are also trained to love drops because of role-playing games. You take care of that goblin, you pick up his treasure. I think that would be a really interesting addition to Infighting, is that you would be able to get a collection of items that you are winning when you're taking out another opponent. Maybe even 2 types of item cards. Like one would be minor items, and one would be like magic items, like mundane and magic. You get like the mundane from the bystanders, and the magic when you defeat another player's character. I think that would be very interesting. And the other thing I would like to see added to the game, which I think would really kind of up the chaos level. A little bit of chaos is awesome in games. Trust me on this. Not an overlot, not an overabundance. But a little bit of chaos goes a long way in a game. And for this game, for Infighting, I think that could be brought forward in the game with wandering monsters. Something that goes back to the beginnings of Dungeons and Dragons. Wandering monster encounters. DM rolls a die. If a number comes up, he then rolls other dice against a chart to see what that wandering monster is. I would like to see monsters wander into the bar in the middle of the bar fight. And then you can get extra XP by taking them out. Maybe getting some treasure drops from them. I think that would be really cool. Infighting, either way, it needs new. It needs more. And that's why I put it on this list. Because it's one of my favorite games. It's the one that started me on this path, as I said. I had to make that the first game I told you about. So that was Infighting by Wizards of the Coast. Now the other 2 games, this next one, unless you've heard it from me, this game gets very little press. I don't quite understand why. It's definitely a fun 2-player game. You can play it 4 players. I think you can play it 3 players also. Pardon me. And this game came to my attention about 2 years ago, and it is called Fate of Akalon. Tribes. In a nutshell, what the game is about is a fantasy setting world that is being devastated by natural causes, natural events. It's just a natural process. The world is changing to a point where life is hard to be sustained on it. And you pick one of 4 decks to play elves or dwarves or goblins or undead. And you're vying for land is what you're doing in this game. It's a fixed deck game. I like that. I'm not very big on deck builders. And I'm completely turned off by collectible card games. So this fits for me perfectly. I don't have to worry about chasing down other cards and booster packs and trying to find the rares and the ultra rares. I climbed out of that rabbit hole, my friends, and I'm not jumping back in. I think that this, in its most basic form, needs more tribes. I would like to see more tribes in this game, more options than the base 4. The base 4 is good, but it kind of limits the replayability in a sense, because you've seen everything you can do with the elf tribe, or the undead tribe, or the goblins, or the dwarves. Once you go through these decks, nothing new. That doesn't mean nothing exciting. It doesn't mean nothing exciting. The game is still fun. I still enjoy playing it, but it's getting to the point now where I want to change. I want something different. The rules for the game is very, very simple. It's an easy game to learn, easy game to pick up, easy game to teach. I don't think they need to add anything else to the rule system. I don't think they need to bring anything new in with an expansion. But I would like to see at least one more expansion for the game that has at least 2 more tribes in it. Maybe an aquatic tribe, maybe an avian tribe, or maybe just other standard, rote fantasy-style tribes, like gnomes or lizard people or something. It needs something. It needs more tribes. Fate of Acheron, tribes. If you don't have this game, check it out. And hopefully we'll get an expansion for that sometime soon. Now, the last game I want to talk about is a game I've had a lot of problems with. It falls into the category of one of the games I have yet to beat, either solo or in a team, actually. So the game deserves to get its butt kicked by us. It really does at this point, I got to tell you. That game is Pandemic: Reign of Cthulhu. So it's a standard 4-player version of Pandemic, with the differences taking place in the 1920s or 30s, and it's in New England. So there's only a few towns. You have based on the Arkham writings, the mythos, tales of Lovecraft and his contemporaries that joined him on that trip into the weird. I would like to see them follow suit with the original Pandemic game. Well, at least the remake of it. I didn't have the first edition, but I know in the remake, the second edition of On the Brink, the first expansion for the game, it adds what I call the 5th-player switch. 4-player game that can become a 5th-player game. But once it's a 5-player game, that 5th player makes it a one-for-all game where you're all playing against that one person. Now, in Pandemic, what happens is the 5th player becomes the bioterrorist, and they're running around the globe causing all these problems. Makes it very fun. I like games like that. I love the 5th-player switch games. So I'm thinking that with Pandemic Cthulhu, we can have basically a lot of the same, but add in the 5th-player switch. First of all, it definitely needs the 5th-player switch, just like On the Brink did. Have one of the players, the 5th player would play the cult leader, who's trying to get all his cult members together to summon these elder beings, right? I think that would be a really, really fun addition to Pandemic: Reign of Cthulhu. The other thing that I was thinking about for that game is, and I know Z-Man Games isn't as big on doing this as Fantasy Flight Games is, and that's an expansion with another board. It's not a big thing that they do, and it's not needed. But the idea crossed my mind that if you made for the expansion of Pandemic Cthulhu a city board, so instead of going from one city like Arkham to Dunwich, it all takes place in Arkham. Or even better yet, make it something a little bit different, like Arkham University or the museum. The whole game take place in there. I think that would be really interesting. It would help bring the combination. Remember what I was talking about earlier? The combination of more of the same, along with something new. I think those 3 games definitely could use and need an upgrade as far as expansions go. So, I'm your buddy Big Johnny G. The Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. And my friends, thank you for following us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And of course, as always, my friends, thank you so much for subscribing to us here on YouTube, for following us, for sharing us, and for commenting. It makes it all seem so worthwhile. So once again, I'm your buddy Big Johnny G. The Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. And my friends, I am out of here.